The next philosophic thing I want you to consider is called the Warf-Sapir hypothesis, and I'll spell that for you. WHORF, and then there's a dash, Sapir, capital SAPIR. And I believe it's named after the two researchers, and I've also seen it listed as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, but it's the same hypothesis. And this is what it is. And once again, this is what the essay questions will be on the midterm. I'll probably have a half dozen for you to look through. So things like Noam Chomsky universal grammar and the Warf-Sapir hypothesis. And what the Warf-Sapir hypothesis is saying is language shapes worldviews. Language is what allows us to interact with the world beyond ourselves. And think about it, even if you're not verbally speaking, you constantly have this internal voice or dialogue going on inside of your head, and it's telling me things like laptop, students, notes, book, chair, light, window. And I'm constantly doing this informational feedback with this voice in my head and the world around me. Well, the Warf-Sapir hypothesis says language becomes the world in which you live, but it also becomes the cage in which you are bound. Because what happens if you have a thought that is outside of your language? How are you supposed to express it? How are you supposed to explain it to someone else? So language is the world in which we live, but it also forms the boundary of that world. And so for those of you that are multilingual, and think about it, I'm not saying learning another language is going to double your world or worlds, but it's certainly going to allow you to express yourself and to understand things in a deeper way than if you were simply a single language speaker. I know when I speak in Spanish, it actually affects my personality, my mood, the way I carry myself. It's a much lighter, more melodic, romantic language than English. English is very direct, guttural. It comes from the Germanic roots. It can sound very harsh. I'll never forget when I finally got to go to Italy 2 years ago, and it was so beautiful hearing Italian. It was like bird singing. So much so that I didn't even want people to talk to me in English anymore. It was just too hard on my ears. I just wanted to hear that beautiful Italian. It was kind of sing-songy, a lot of emotion, a lot of passion. And I know those of you that are Spanish speakers, it's probably very similar for you. Spanish comes like Italian. It has a lot of Latin roots, carries a lot of the Latin feeling and flavor that's communicated not just in the language, but into the way people think and the way they relate to others in the world in which they live. Any questions on that one? What would be like a critique of this hypothesis? What would be some of the problems saying that language is the cage in which you live?
That doesn't take into account like other forms of expression.
Okay, right. Maybe some things are simply beyond words, right? So we have to express them with dance or just an exasperated sigh or groan. My biggest critique would be, then how do cultures come up with new words? Because they do all the time. So obviously people are able to think beyond what the linguistic limits of their culture have taught them. I know Immanuel Kant added, I don't even know how many words to the German language because the German language wasn't big enough for his ideas. Fortunately, German allows you to keep combining words together with hyphens to make these really long, like 20 hyphenated words combined to combine one concept or idea. But Kant had to actually introduce different words in different things into the German language to express some of his ideas or concepts that the language at the time could not express. And plus, we're always changing, right? As we discover new things, language is important, but we often can use other words. So, for example, the Native Americans didn't have any word for train, but in their native language, they combined two words, iron and horse, to explain what a train was. A train was an iron horse. And so we can use our limited words. It might not be as precise as having a singular word for a thought or feeling or emotion or abstract idea, but language does have a way to communicate, even though it might take more words to come across than one. All right, enough of that.